Hey guys, welcome back to more crazy entitled neighbor stories. In this video, a neighbor called the police on my kids for supposedly public indecency at our own pool. Let's dive right into the story. So I am a single father of two wonderful children, 8 and 10, who we will call Andrew and Loris. I won't go into details, but their mother died a few years back and it has been difficult recently to get back on our feet. We bounced back and forth a lot between my in-laws' place and my parents, but eventually I managed to find a job in a city not too far from either set of grandparents, so my kids and I relocated here. We've been here for almost a year and a half now, the neighborhood is relatively friendly and they welcomed my family with open arms. I'm friends with quite a few of the other parents here and our kids often have playdates. For some additional context, I'm gonna quickly talk about my neighbor, who we will just call Mr. Eastwand. He and his wife are in their 60s and just moved in about 4 months ago. Up until recently, I've had few interactions with him, but all I know is that he is retired and he really enjoys leaving around anonymous notes when he thinks we have broken the law. For example, once he left a note on my door about where I had parked my car. I parked it in front of his house since there was no room in front of mine, which he claimed was illegal. I apologize for it, but I don't think Mr. Eastwand liked me very much since then. I thought that he had just had a bone to pick with me for whatever reason, but after some digging, I found that he has a habit of doing this throughout the entire block and all the neighbors I've talked to hate it. Anyway, my backyard has a pretty big pool. It spans about 25 feet and goes to around 6 feet deep. I never had a pool before moving into this house, so I've had to teach myself how to take care of the pool. We live in a desert area, which means that it's mostly hot all year round until it's winter when the weather drops out of nowhere, so having a pool has been great. It gives my kids something to do and a form of exercise. Andrew and Loris are often swimming around when the temperature is particularly high, either by themselves or with their friends over. A month ago, my daughter had her birthday party at our house. I took the time to decorate the backyard to her liking, hanging posters of streamers, things like that to match her theme. She's really taken a liking to The Legend of Zelda, and by the way guys, I can tell that kid is legendary. It was a party of about 7 kids consisting mainly of girls. I stayed mostly in the backyard to cook, we were barbecuing and supervise. Some of the parents were there and we chatted while our kids were having a blast. All in all, it was really great until the police got called on us. I was in the backyard, so of course I did not see the police show up. It was so rowdy that I couldn't even hear the doorbell ring. However, along with the traditional doorbell, I also have a Ring camera installed. The camera notifies you whenever there's motion detected, so I got the notification on my phone prompting me to check what it was. When I saw it was the police, I was a little scared and confused. I did not know what I could have done to get the police called on me, but I decided to check it out anyway. I asked one of the parents to watch the kids while I dealt with the cops. I opened the door, greeted the police officers and asked them what the problem was. The officers told me that my neighbor, who they pointed out was Mr. Eastwand, called them for supposedly public indecency, saying that the children were wearing inappropriate swimwear and that the music was being played far too loud. I invited the officers in to check on the kids, asking them not to look too intimidating as to not frighten the children. The officers agreed and followed me into the backyard. Now, I would like to note that the children were all in acceptable swimwear. The girls were all dressed in bodysuits and outfits of the sort, while my son, who was also swimming around, was wearing a long-sleeve swimming shirt with shorts. All in all, I did not think the kids' swimwear was in the slightest bit inappropriate, and neither did the cops. They also concluded that the volume was acceptable, and since they couldn't even hear it from the front of my house. The police apologized to me and I offered them some food for their troubles. The police declined but said that they were going to confront Mr. Eastwand and asked if I wanted to come with them. I agreed, so we went next door. The police knocked on the door and Mr. Eastwand stepped outside looking very stern. If you're trying to imagine what he looks like, picture Theodore Roosevelt in a polo and tight slacks. He asked the officers if they were the cops he had called, completely ignoring my presence. One of the officers said yes and explained that after surveying the situation, they concluded that there was no pretense for Mr. Eastwand to have called the cops. Mr. Eastwand seemed very taken aback and even tried arguing that the music was waking him up and things like that, but the cops quickly shut him down, saying that they concluded that the music was fine and that the swimwear was not inappropriate at all. They issued him a warning telling him that he ever made such unnecessary calls again, they would have to take action against him. I didn't say anything throughout the entire interaction, but I was glad to see Mr. Eastwood's plans backfire on him. I thanked the officers once more and returned to the party. Luckily, the children were so caught up in their antics that they hadn't noticed the cops, but one of the parents did, so I talked to him about it as he's actually a good friend of mine. I expressed my anger at Mr. Eastwood. This was not any different than his usual antics, but to do it during my daughter's birthday party was infuriating enough. Not to mention, it was weird how he focused on the children's swimwear, well, since they are literally children. I tried to ignore my frustration though for my daughter's sake, and after a while, I forgot that the cops even swung by. We ended up having a grand time, even with that brief interruption. I thought that was the end of it, but a few days later I ended up receiving letters at my front door complaining about a variety of things such as my kids' unruly behavior, the pool toys scattered about, and other trivial things like that. There was even one letter dissing the color of my home. Honestly, it couldn't have been more obvious that Mr. Eastwood was just looking for something to complain about, and yes, although the letters were anonymous, I knew right away that they were from him. No one else in the neighborhood would be that entitled and self-righteous to complain about such trivial stuff. Apparently, these complaints even ended up reaching the online forum we have for our neighborhood, as I've heard from some of my nicer neighbors. It got to the breaking point a few weeks ago when Mr. Eastwood posted a petition on the neighborhood forum to get rid of my pool. Frankly, I don't know why my pool was such a big concern of his, but thankfully, the petition had no signatures other than himself. This was the point where it all became bothersome and just downright nasty, so I decided to confront Mr. Eastwood myself. I knocked on his door one evening and introduced myself, although I'm sure he already knew who I was. I quickly explained that I knew that the online posts and anonymous letters were his doing, and told him that I did not appreciate his commentary, especially since he was the only one who seemed to have a problem with me. However, Mr. Eastwood kept denying his involvement with the letters, but said that I should consider what the person was complaining about, which, seriously, how dumb can you be? Anyway, it was clear that Mr. Eastwood was not gonna back down. I mulled over what to do for a bit. I would have tried the legal way, but there was no evidence that Mr. Eastwood posted the messages, and I didn't want to go through all the trouble. Ultimately, I concluded that Mr. Eastwood, like most others, was probably doing this for a power trip of some sorts, wanting to feel important by asserting power over people in the neighborhood. Realizing this, I wanted to give Mr. Eastwood a taste of his own medicine. Anyone can create a website, it's incredibly easy. You can do it through those companies like Squarespace, but even through Google itself with Google Sites, which is free. So using Google Sites, I created a website for a non-existent neighborhood watch group. I made myself the captain and even got some of my friends who live in the neighborhood to go along with it. I have a friend who specializes in making props, so I asked him to make me a fake badge so I could wear it. With this in mind, I started doing what Mr. Eastwood did to me. I started delivering official warnings about some rather trivial stuff like the height of his hedges, his parking, and the duration of him leaving his trash cans on the street. Things like that. I made sure to give him the warnings in person, which were all verbal, because I wasn't gonna go through the work of printing warnings. Although I did not have any official looking papers, I think my acting and the badge seemed to work because Mr. Eastwood seemed genuinely scared. Every time I showed up at his door, I also uploaded photos of the infractions onto the website, so it seemed more official. Now, I know that this can probably count as harassment, and trust me, there were countless times where I was doing this and I felt bad. I kept reminding myself, however, that Mr. Eastwood was doing this to everyone in the neighborhood and that it would do the old man some good to get served his own medicine. Mr. Eastwood actually started listening to the rules that I warned him about, for example, always making sure to take in his trash cans before 6 p.m, trimming his hedges when he gets a chance, etc. From what I heard, Mr. Eastwood talked this out with one of our neighbors who was in on it, thankfully, and said that he was gonna try reporting it to the police. However, his claims ended up being ignored because of his history of trivial complaints. After a bit, Mr. Eastwood's anonymous letters and posts on the forum stopped, and in that time frame, I also ceased giving him warnings. I waited 2 weeks and afterwards concluded that Mr. Eastwood was probably finally done with his harassment. With that done, I decided to remove the website. As one last test, I hosted a pool party, inviting my friends and the neighbors who helped me with tricking Mr. Eastwood. The whole time I was anticipating Mr. Eastwood to spring back up and call the cops on us, but he didn't. He he was just sitting on his porch grumbling to himself, reading a book. I was unbelievably relieved, although I had to stop to Mr. Eastwood's level in order to prove a point to him. I'm glad that my actions were able to get him to stop his dictatorship. Now my neighbors and I can live in peace and my kids can focus on being kids. And yeah guys, I guess sometimes you need to become the Karen in order to beat the Karen. Either way, the next one is a super funny Am I the Jerk story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, Am I the A-hole for getting revenge on an entitled customer? So let me start by saying that I worked retail for years, so I know how soul-crushing it can be. This happened back in 1993 when I was living in San Diego, and honestly, I still think about it sometimes. So I had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. It was around 9 PM and I desperately needed caffeine for my drive home. I stopped at this Vons near Pacific Beach, you know, one of those stores that is usually empty that late except for college students buying ramen and elderly insomniacs. The fluorescent lights were giving me a headache as I grabbed a bottle of Mountain Dew. Hey, it was the 90s, that was our Red Bull. As I walked towards the only open register, I noticed a cashier, a guy probably in his early 20s with a name tag that read Patrick. And by the way guys, if I ever read too quickly, I apologize, but I blame that on way too much caffeine. Either way, the poor kid looked completely done with his shift, but he still managed a tired smile when he saw me approaching with my single item. And that is when it happened. This woman, let's call her Hurricane Heather, because that's exactly what she was, came barreling out of the frozen food aisle pushing a cart so full it looked like she was prepping for the apocalypse. She was wearing what had to be the most aggressively beige pantsuit I've ever seen, topped off with one of those "I need to speak to your manager" haircuts that were becoming popular. Before I could even react, she cut directly in front of me, nearly running over my foot with her cart. Now remember, this was 1993, cashiers had to manually enter every single price, every single one. "I'm in a hurry," she announced like she was declaring a state of emergency, which might well be the case because obviously if you meet a Karen in any sort of grocery store, supermarket, etc., it's basically an emergency situation. Either way, then she gave me this look, this perfect combination of contempt and dismissal, like I was something she had scraped off her shoes. She did not even try to hide her eye roll. When she turned away, I caught Patrick's eye and he gave me this subtle headshake that spoke volumes. I could tell this was not his first run-in with Hurricane Heather. What happened next was both painful and fascinating to watch, like seeing a slow-motion train wreck made entirely of coupons and attitude. Hurricane Heather started unloading her cart and I swear she had enough groceries to feed a small army. Every few items she would snap at Patrick and say, "Make sure you scan that twice, it is buy one get one." Or, "That's supposed to be on sale, it was marked 50% off." She even had one of those massive coupon organizers, you know, the kind that looked like a small briefcase. "These coupons are expired," Patrick said quietly, holding up a handful. "No, they're not." Heather snatched them from his hand. She said, "Look, this one says March 1993. "Ma'am, it is March 1994. "Well, that's ridiculous. Your store should still honor them. I want to speak to your manager." Patrick reached for the phone to call a manager, but Heather suddenly changed her mind and said, "Never mind, I don't have time for this. Just ring up what you can." I stood there, Mountain Dew in hand, watching this woman berate this poor kid for literally just doing his job. Every price he entered was questioned, every bag he filled was critiqued. "Don't put the bread with the cans. Are you trying to ruin everything? Didn't they train you properly?" Patrick maintained this zen-like calmness that I honestly admired. He just kept typing in prices one at a time, while Heather tapped her acrylic nails on the counter and made exasperated sighs every 30 seconds. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he announced her total, $247. "That can't be right," Heather snapped. "Ring it up again." "Ma'am, I can assure you, ring it up again." So he did every single item again. 247.83, he repeated. Heather glared at the display like it had personally insulted her ancestors. She pulled out her checkbook, because of course she did, and spent another 5 minutes writing out the check while mumbling about how everything was overpriced and how the store was clearly trying to rip her off. As she was leaving, she turned back to give me one last contemptuous look. "Maybe next time you will do your shopping at a less busy hour." That is when Patrick looked at me and said those beautiful words, "You're good, I put you a soda on her tag." I stood there for a moment processing what he'd just said. This kid had just charged my Mountain Dew to Hurricane Heather's 2473.83 total. She had never even noticed the extra dollar, but the pure poetic justice of it made me wanna hug him. Instead though, I just grinned and said, "You're my hero, Patrick." He shrugged, but I could see him fighting back a smile. Some people need to learn that karma takes many forms, even caffeinated ones. Now here's where it gets interesting. I went home that night feeling pretty good about the whole thing. After all, Hurricane Heather had been horrible to both me and Patrick, and the cost of a Mountain Dew was hardly gonna bankrupt her. However, this story has become a bit of a debate topic among my friends and family. While I still believe Hurricane Heather deserved some consequence for her entitled behavior, I wonder if I should have refused Patrick's offer or even reported it to his manager. So Reddit, am I the jerk for accepting and even celebrating this small act of retail revenge? Should I have just paid for my soda and taken the high road, or was this justified karma for someone who clearly needed an attitude adjustment? And yeah, Ripe stars, obviously OP should have reported this to the manager in case he was a Karen himself. That would have then been a missed opportunity. Anyway, a user in the comments said, "I worked retail for 15 years and people like her are the reason that turnover is so high. Sometimes small acts of justice are all we get. You didn't plan it, you just accepted that the universe and Patrick offered." Comment number 2, Soft Ears H, aka everyone sucks here. The woman was clearly awful, but theft is theft, even if it is just $1. The cashier risked his job for petty revenge. That said, I probably would have done the same thing. The next comment said, "You are the a-hole." I know this won't be popular, but celebrating theft is wrong, period. The woman was absolutely terrible, but you basically patted a cashier on the back for committing fraud. And by the way guys, that commenter, correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, sounds like a terrible Karen himself. Either way, what if she was on a tight budget and that extra dollar meant something? What if she balanced her checkbook to the penny and discovered the discrepancy, came back and got that kid fired? You and the cashier both decided that because someone was rude, it was okay to steal from them. That is not justice, that is just revenge wrapped in a feel-good story. Being treated poorly does not give you the right to do something illegal, even if it is just $1. The fact that you're still bragging about this 30 years later is kind of sad. You could have reported her behavior to a manager or written a complaint, but instead you chose to participate in theft and fraud. The woman sucked, but you and the cashier were wrong too. Added, thanks for the downvotes, proving that Reddit cares more about revenge than actual ethics. And yeah guys, I totally disagree with that comment, let's just say it like that. And the next one is a story from r/am I the a-hole, and of course there's also an update, so please watch until the end to see the conclusion. Even though I, 23 female, am American, my parents are immigrants and therefore I have a different cultural upbringing than most. Well, one thing that was hammered into my head from a young age was to always bring a small gift when visiting anyone's house. It does not matter if it's family or friends or that one person you kinda know but don't really like, bringing something is a must. My boyfriend, 28 male, and I have been dating for almost 4 years now, and since we both work from home, he suggested we make dinner with his parents a weekly thing since we have not been able to see each other much for obvious reasons. I love his parents, so obviously I agreed. Every week I made sure to bring something small to show my appreciation for them cooking for us. Of course, always using my own money. A small bottle of wine, their favorite dessert, some flowers, etc., and they always thanked me for it. This has been going on for a few months and absolutely didn't notice anything out of the ordinary until yesterday when my boyfriend and I were preparing to head over. I'd gotten a cute vase of daffodils since luckily I had found some in bloom and my boyfriend's mom really loves them, but my boyfriend suddenly got really mad and asked why I kept bringing stuff over every week like his parents were a charity case. Honestly, I got super confused and asked him what the problem was and that I've always done this with everyone including his friends since we met. That it was a cultural thing, but then he got even madder and told me to stop imposing my culture on everyone, and it's weird since I'm white. At that point, I did not feel like going anywhere with him and I just gave him the flowers and went for a walk while he drove over to dinner by himself. Afterwards he came home, he still had the flowers which he gave to me and told me he was sorry, but his parents really were super annoyed with me constantly bringing stuff over. Like they cannot take care of themselves, and later on I got a text from his dad asking me to not come over for dinner anymore. Now my boyfriend is giving me the cold shoulder unless I give his parents a huge apology, but really, I don't feel like I'm in the wrong for trying to be nice to them. And here, Ripe stars, this is absolutely toxic. I mean, clearly OP is not the a-hole here, she is just being super nice, and these people, I don't know what's wrong with them, honestly. Anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Quick edit, I did not realize you could edit posts directly, but I'm in a hurry to convince him to let me go over to his parents' house. I did post a brief update and FHQ in my most recent comment. Comment number 1 from Reddit, not the a-hole and definitely talk to the parents. From your post and comments, it sounds like he said something to his parents, which is definitely a lie. Responding to flowers or dessert with, as if the two of them couldn't take care of themselves, sounds strange. Something is fishy here. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, it's called a hostess gift and even some white people have manners and give them. It sucks that his family is too trashy to understand classy manners. By the way, pretty sure the dad's text is more about the spin your boyfriend put on his crap fit, not anything to do with the hostess gift. It would be interesting to ask for clarification, but not worth it. And yeah, Ripe stars, thankfully we now have an update to the entire situation, and it reads like this. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support and replies. So I'm looking forward to going over to everyone's houses for dinner, and I'll be sure to bring all the things you said you liked. Many flower lovers out there. I'm now also apparently the daughter-in-law to a lot of hopeful parents that replied as well, so I hope I can deliver on expectations. Well, after my last update, I told my boyfriend that I was sick and tired of him dancing around the issue with his parents, and I was going to go over to their house whether he liked it or not. At this point, I think he realized that whatever he was doing had backfired, so he sat down all angry and told me that he would explain. I sat and he told me that he had done something very spur of the moment and that he had texted me from his dad's phone and then blocked the number but begged me to listen. That he just needed to get his parents off me for a while and to not leave. Apparently his parents had started hinting at him about marriage. Since my boyfriend and I talked a lot about it, I fully expected to marry him, as I said in another comment, and was honestly expecting a proposal in late spring since that is when we met. 4 years dating didn't bother me, but I was getting excited to settle down. However, my boyfriend apparently realized that he absolutely did not want to commit to anything and wanted to experiment and have fun since I was not being fun anymore. Honestly, that just made me cry since we were each other's first for everything and usually very good at communicating our needs. His grand plan was to get him mad at me, so I would beg for forgiveness and then he would only accept an open relationship as an answer. Absolutely brilliant plan, I know. He had made up his parents getting mad but did not expect me to blow off dinner completely, and it's like hitting a jackpot, his words not mine. He went over for dinner, hid the flowers and said we had gotten into a huge fight, but he was gonna fix it, but I needed space. After he confessed all this, he said he was sorry but really didn't want to miss out on new experiences when he was still young, and would I consider an open relationship but pretend ours was strained with his parents so they wouldn't get suspicious? And I laughed. I laughed his ass right out of the door and told him absolutely not and to leave me alone while I packed because I wanted to have some new experiences too. He never stopped begging me to stay, but I left to sleep at a friend's place. After calming down for a few days, I cemented the breakup and finally actually went over to his parents. My ex-boyfriend's dad never even noticed the phone missing, but still apologized, and his mom was a mess. I did and still love them and will eat dinner there without him as often as I can. I won't lie that I'm sad about 4 years down the drain, but that is life. And if that was my ex's best possible plan, then I dodged a bullet by a mile. And here, Ripe stars, wow, I gotta say, that story took such a turn, and I'm so happy that OP basically dodged a bullet here, even though, as she said, 4 years down the drain, but it's better for her to stop now than to get married to this guy. Still, I feel so bad for what happened to her. Honestly, that boyfriend was crazy and abusive, and I would not wish that on anyone. Before we end the video, we will read a funny story from r/petty revenge. It is titled, "Would not sell on my 21st birthday, so I'm gonna support big business." So it is my 21st birthday, and a weird Korean family tradition we have is that the 21-year-old buys the first drinks and smokes for their grandfather and parents. I went to the smoke shop right at the end of my block, asked for what I needed, grabbed my wallet and handed my ID over. My ID clearly says 21 years old on the 28th of January 2025 and it scans no problem. Then the clerk sees my birthday and asks, I don't say anything other than, yes, I'm now 21, is there something wrong with my ID? The dude pulls out this little digital clock and it says, Cannot sell to anyone born before this date, which shows January 29th, 2025. He says I have to wait 24 hours and that I legally cannot buy anything. I told him that's not how it works nor what the clock means. He said he does not make the rules and that I cannot even buy even though I'm 21. So I did what anyone else would do. I flashed the wad of cash I had in my wallet and said, "Man, that's really a shame." The guy sees it and begins to backpedal as I'm walking out the door. He stops me and said I should come back tomorrow and he will sell me whatever I want. I ended it with, "Oh sweet, but I think the Wawa might beat you out today." So I went to where I should have started and the kind Wawa employee who knows me gave me a free beer and told me happy birthday. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.